In this video, Anthony Pompliano argues that establishing a Bitcoin reserve should be a top priority for President-elect Donald Trump in his first month in office, with Bitcoin prices surging 30% since Trump's election due to market excitement over his pro-Bitcoin stance. Pompliano stresses the need for the U.S. government to actively purchase Bitcoin to compete globally for this limited asset, given that only 21 million Bitcoins exist. Additionally, Pompliano warns that the biggest threat to individual wealth lies in not owning enough Bitcoin, especially as the dollar loses purchasing power due to currency debasement.
Promises made and promises kept. And I think that that is something that President Trump should do very quickly so that we don't get front run by other countries.
Anthony, I don't think any countries except for El Salvador are jumping into the Bitcoin reserve game just yet, or at least they haven't said they are. And even President-elect Trump, it is not clear if that strategic reserve would just hold the Bitcoin that the government already has or buy new Bitcoin. The latter would be a much more sort of controversial move and perhaps counterintuitive since, you know, the strategic reserve of dollars is the world's reserve currency. So, I mean, how likely do you actually think it is that the U.S. government's going to be buying it for that reserve?
Well, so there are a couple of other countries that maybe are not as well known, but for example, the country of Bhutan has about $1 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. But these are small countries, right? They're not kind of susceptible to the innovator's dilemma. They have the ability to do this because there's not a lot of risk. They don't have a huge economy that is put kind of in place. And so I think when it comes to the United States, yes, holding the Bitcoin that we already have is kind of a no-brainer, but buying it is also very, very important. There is a global race for Bitcoin going on right now. And whether you are a local, state, or federal government official, you should be figuring out how to get as much Bitcoin onto the balance sheet as possible. This is not like gold where we can just go dig up more of it out of the ground. This is not like other assets that can be created out of thin air. There's only 21 million. And on the off chance that Bitcoin ends up actually fulfilling the promise of Bitcoin, we're going to want to hold as much of it as possible. And so we're not talking about large amounts of money. I mean, the national debt increased by $850 billion in the last 90 days. If we were to try to put that same $850 billion into Bitcoin, that is about half of the current market cap. And so we're talking about $50, $100 billion. That's small numbers, rounding errors when it comes to the government spending. And I think that it is well worth the risk reward.
Anthony, besides policy, I think you could expect personnel changes here. President-elect Trump has made it very clear how he feels, of course, about SEC Chair Gensler. Any candidates you'd like to see running the SEC? Anthony, any bets you'd place there?
No, I think that whoever it is will be somebody who's smart, prudent, and hopefully pro-crypto.
Anthony, some of the commentary I've seen has suggested that whatever policy the SEC ends up taking towards crypto could actually be more beneficial to altcoins as opposed to Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin, after all, at this point is pretty accessible in a number of different ways, not necessarily so with the altcoins. Do you agree with that take?
I think that Bitcoin has the most regulatory clarity already. And so if there is an increase of regulatory clarity, it naturally is going to flow to other assets. Obviously, Ethereum also has an ETF that is approved, but I expect Solana and many others to get approved over time as well. And so, you know, Bitcoin is kind of the big winner so far. I think it will continue to be the king of the industry, but it does have the most regulatory clarity. That's been a huge boom and tailwind for the asset. But that same regulatory clarity, I think, is coming for other assets over time as well.
You know, Anthony, we talk so much about the Trump victory, but, you know, Ohio is sending its pro-crypto candidate Bernie Moreno to the Senate as well. How important do you think that was as well to sentiment here?
Well, you know, I met Bernie Moreno well before he ever wanted to be a politician, and he was pretty pro-Bitcoin at that time as well. I think he believes in, you know, fundamental rights like the United States was built upon, and so it's great to see him kind of put into that position of kind of governance. And I really just think that this is a complete mandate. The American people spoke. You know, the last time that a Republican won the popular vote was quite a while ago. And so anytime that you have such consensus from the American people, the people that we are putting into these positions of governance hopefully will go and fulfill that mandate. And it's important that they remember what they promised, because that's why people put them into these positions. And so now it's time to kind of just go execute. Stop with any of the divisive politics, stop with kind of the competition of campaigning. And now it's time to govern. And let's go and actually affect the change that was promised.
Anthony, we've seen, of course, all of the cycles in Bitcoin prices. While certainly could have much more upside from here, what do you think is the biggest risk right now? What's the thing that's going to trigger the next crypto winter?
The biggest risk for most people is that they don't own enough Bitcoin. Because
Come on,
if you're
Anthony,
not
you know
owning-
that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, what is the biggest risk to price action?
No, again, I think that is the biggest risk, because if people aren't holding Bitcoin as a portion of their portfolio, that means that they have 100% of their wealth allocated to dollars or dollar-denominated assets such as stocks, et cetera. And in our country, there is death, there's taxes, and there's the national debt is going to go up. And so Bitcoin is a proxy for currency debasement. The US dollar has lost 25% of its purchasing power in the last 5 years. 50% of our country has 100% of their wealth in dollars. It's a national crisis. 50% of the American citizens had 25% of their wealth stolen from them silently. They have no clue it happened. We have to educate these people. It's a financial education gap. An asset like Bitcoin is a digital savings account that helps protect them against that currency debasement. There's many other assets that they can also put into that investment portfolio, but holding too many dollars is the biggest risk in a world where the national debt going up and the currency being debased is all but guaranteed.
Anthony, always good to have you on the show. Appreciate your time and insight, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.